Alright, hello ladies and gents, I'm the Dapper Rat, but this time with no real quip at the start because this one is not so much of a script. I just kind of have notes at the side that for me to cover for each character. But today we are doing finally a strength tier list. So last time, kind of a meme, I did a fun tier list. Now it's like an actual tier list the way that you guys understand them, but we have to set some ground rules. I need to explain my rating system because I feel like this is just missed in so many different tier list videos. So starting out, I want to say that a B tier character is like perfect. That is a perfectly balanced character, and they don't need buffs, they don't need nerfs, you know, maybe tweaks or if something is like a little bit off. But like B tier is good. If your character is in B tier, you should be happy with that, at least in my opinion. A tier and C tier are inverses of each other, where an A tier character, generally speaking, has like really inflated numbers, or the design of the character like has to be strong in order to fulfill the hero fantasy that they're going for. Which means that for C tier, it's the opposite. The numbers are just a bit lackluster, or the design requires the character to be weak so that other players are allowed to play the game. Then we run into S and D tier, and S tier basically makes the game almost unplayable for everybody except for the person running the S tier character, and then D tier is the opposite, where the person playing the D tier character is like, it's a crazy amount of effort and skill needed to actually perform in a match. And spoiler alert, I don't think anybody is really D tier in Deadlock. Okay, so with that out of the way, we can continue on. Here is the full tier list. I'm not gonna waste you guys time. This is the entire tier list, so you can go and leave your opinion down in the comments and tell me how stupid I am. But if you want to be more astute, you know, you can stick around. You can skip ahead to your character to see why I give them the reason I give them. And you're also gonna realize that I give characters kind of a reach or a range of which they can perform in, because some players play a character to a better degree than others, and sometimes depending on how the enemy reacts to your character will determine how much of a effect they actually have in a match. So starting off with Abrams, going alphabetically, I would put him in the B+ tier. I think he is really good and really balanced. The only thing that's really stopping him from being B tier is his hit detection on stuff like his pin. His pin sometimes feels very weird, where it's like he didn't really hit you, but it'll pull you and kind of suck you in anyways. So it's like kind of a dissonance between what I am visually seeing on my screen and what is actually happening in the game engine. But outside of that, he's kind of a fine character. You know, everything is clearly displayed with his kit. It's understandable how to play against him. He is killable despite being a tank, so he still has to utilize stuff like cover or some sort of movement to get out of bad situations. He could be buffed in the future. They usually do like giving characters like different times in the spotlight and stuff like that. But overall, like, his numbers aren't insane, and he just performs his job really well. It's just that little dissonance between what you can see with his shoulder pin. And last thing to say is that I would say he can maybe get up to like an A- tier, where he feels like a bit too much of just a bit too much. He might be a bit too strong, but generally speaking, there's other characters and other reasons for that to happen in the match, or maybe someone's smurfing, and he can drop as low as B- if people are running a couple of counter items and stuff like that. But still, regardless, you are able to outplay a lot of these counter items as Abrams. You know, rebuttal is very strong against Abrams, but if he, you know, never lets you parry, then it's not really gonna do much anyways. Moving on, we have Apollo, which I put into A tier. He's definitely strong, definitely strong, but he is very held back by counter items, and that's specifically why he has such a large range, going just barely up to A+. I don't really think he reaches S tier, where the game is basically unwinnable if he gets ahead. But he is very strong, but also dropping as far down as to like B+ tier, because certain counter items like the 1600 item, what's it called? Is it Slowing Hex? I think it's an active item, but it disables movement based abilities, and literally his ultimate, so his fourth ability, and his first and second ability, I think, not the parry, not Apollo's parry. Every ability that's not his parry is considered a movement ability for Apollo. So you basically have a silence for 1600 that locks on. It's very strong. It lasts like 3.5 seconds if I remember correctly. It's very brutal against Apollo. I feel like he's also incredibly prone to a rework. It kind of feels like a missed opportunity to have like a melee fencing hero and not have them do melee damage the same way that what's her name, Silver does in her alt form. But then again, with kind of what they're going for, I think he's prone to a rework, but whether he gets it or not, I don't know. He's unlikely to be nerfed into an unplayable state, I will say. Like, it's very, very unlikely that he's ever going to be C tier or D tier. I think he's almost never going to be D tier. It's very unlikely that that's going to happen. And he can easily be overbuffed into an unplayable state. I think we kind of saw that with his release where, admittedly, I thought he was fine, but now going over and playing him some more, he definitely was kind of busted. When he first dropped, where it was just the numbers were way, way, way too high. Now the numbers are more in line and stuff like that, but the only reason that they're in line is because he can be shut down so easily. So I feel like you could actually pull his numbers back even a little bit, maybe shift some things around, and then not have his entire kit get shut off when you use a $1,600 item or 1,600 soul item, and that would probably balance him out more and put him lower down into the B tier. Now, moving on, we have Bebop, who I've specifically put in C+ tier, but has the ability to go up to B- or maybe down to C, or can just skip ahead into the A tier. So he is incredibly volatile, both in effectiveness and his competitive history. His design is inherently toxic, which leads to him being like beaten with hammers one update, and then immediately like buffed the next one. He has like infinite scaling, which opens him up to game ruining strength, but that can also immediately be shut down with a counter item. And not only just that, but like a very popular counter item. People usually get Dispel Magic, which they kind of address, and it doesn't fully remove Bebop from playability, but also Counterspell is incredibly used because of how many players or how many characters it's useful against. And Bebop, it's like you go from doing a lot of damage to doing no damage because they have one item. And at the end of the day, you know, his hook is what ultimately makes him very toxic, because it makes him like kind of a pick character that can hit you from very far away. But at the end of the day, he's kind of outclassed in this pick role by a lot of other characters. Paradox, Holliday, they perform way, way better as pick characters than Bebop does, mostly because outside of their pick potential, they still have something to give to the team, where Bebop just kind of gets shut down by items outright. Moving on, we have Billy with B+ tier. I can see him going into A- or even dropping down to B. I think he's very similar in strength to Abrams, but he has more sustained damage rather than burst. So Abrams, it's very much pin, heavy melee, you use your, I forget what his first, Siphon Life, and then maybe he'll ult you and then melee again, and usually that'll kill you. Very big, heavy amounts of burst. But Billy, generally speaking, has a longer time to kill, but as such, his sustain tends to be a lot more easy to use, because it's just pressing your bat or pressing your bash down, or even just meleeing will give you some HP back because of the wrecked buff or whatever, or the third ability passive and how that works. But also, like, kind of the counter to that is that like a lot of his damage is gun loaded, generally speaking, so you can kind of avoid a lot of it with disarming hex, or you can get away from his bash down damage with counter spell and stuff like that, or you can parry him to reduce his sustain. So while he does have the capability to be stronger than Abrams a lot of the time, he's also able to be counter played rather than counter built, so your playstyle will determine how strong Billy is against you realistically. Calico, I've placed in A- tier. She can go up to A or even drop down to B+. She's generally weaker than the compatriots of the same tier, but is way more consistent. She has near permanent access to an exclusive farm, not necessarily exclusive. Rem and Mo and Krill can also access it in the sewers, all those boxes. And her awareness and comms are her greatest weakness, because she is like a assassin burst down character. So a lot of the time, if you are aware of her location and your team is speaking about where they've last seen Calico and stuff like that, and you're able to fall back before she's able to get the jump on you, then there's not much a Calico can really do to stay ahead and really keep outputting good constant pressure in the way that she's supposed to. Moving on, we have Celeste, who is immediately going into A+ tier with the ability to get into S- and the ability to drop down to A. Celeste is very, very strong in my opinion. But for whatever reason, it's seemingly unknown what the intended playstyle is, mostly due to her most recent changes. So they reduced her they increased her percent scaling, spirit buff scaling, for each time she hits radiant darts, but then nerfed the spirit across her kit except for the ultimate, which they made stronger, which I don't really like or think is her intended playstyle, at least to me, because the way that I've seen myself succeed as Celeste and other people succeed as Celeste is having a drawn out duel where you use your movement and her passive to kind of work as the sustain as a brawl character. So you'll kind of use her a barrier, use your one, you'll get right in their face, take the damage, have the barrier explode, and then immediately start working on like moving around them and hitting them with radiant daggers without them really able to do damage to you because you're kind of flying all over the place. You slowly stack up that damage with the radiant darts, and then you come back in and you burst them down and explode them. And then her ult was kind of on the sideline away from a 1v1 where it's like a team-based ability, and she can force people to split up and let her hit those 1v1s the way that she was supposed to. But with the change that they made her more of a poke character rather than a brawl character, which basically means she's going to be hitting you with her radiant darts before she ever engages you in the first place, which means you as the player being attacked by her are never going to really be in a scenario where you are able to kill her, because if you lock in and you have good ability usage and you have good aim when she's trying to extend this fight, then you can definitely kill her. But if she's just poking you down, you know, just doing little bits of damage until she is finally strong enough to guarantee destroy you, then there's no real interaction from you on either part really, because the Celeste player is just waiting around until she's strong enough to kill you, and you are just kind of waiting around until she's strong enough to kill you, rather than you guys interacting and having some sort of push-pull. The other thing is that the skill floor and the knowledge floor doesn't really match for her. And what I mean by that is that, like, the skill floor for a Celeste is lower, but the knowledge floor isn't. So you still need to learn good movement to be good with Celeste. So the knowledge floor is there, but having good movement makes Celeste movement way easier. You know, like, it's kind of a little bit hard to explain, but if you're good at movement, then you're good with Celeste, and if you're not good with movement, then you're not going to be good with Celeste. But Celeste's movement is inherently easier and makes her better than the normal movement of a regular character. I think that's probably the best way I can explain it. Moving on, we have Doorman, who I'm putting in B+ tier, can go up to A-, drop down to C+. He's incredibly strong, likely to be the reason of your demise because he's really good at flanking on a dime and stuff like that, even if he's with his team. So he's able to support his team and then immediately, boom, out of nowhere flank and secure a kill and then get back out. But he struggles at working alone. He is one of the few characters that aren't like a direct support that still requires the rest of the team to really perform well. Generally speaking, if you see a lot of these clips where a Doorman wins a 1v1, it's usually at the fault of the person that's fighting him for whatever reason. Like realistically, if you get into an altercation, it's like Doorman versus Billy. That should never really end with Doorman beating the Billy unless the Billy made some sort of mistake. Not saying that the Billy would necessarily kill the Doorman, because Doorman's really good for getting away, but it wouldn't really end with Doorman killing Billy, provided that Billy and Doorman are playing at equal levels. Hopefully that makes sense. Moving on, we have Drifter, which has probably the largest range out of any character I think on this list, who I'm placing in B+ tier, but can easily, and not easily, he can spike up to S. He can spike way up right through A tier and right up into S tier, or even drop down to B. Now, the reason for this is because the infinite scaling is what opens Drifter up to having game-ruining strength, similar to Bebop, but the counter items used to counter Drifter are not as impactful as they are against Bebop. So counter spell just completely stops Bebop from doing damage ever. Drifter, if you hit him with like Disarming X or something like that, you're basically putting him on a timer before he's allowed to bend you over. So few counter items to fully stop him. Infinite scaling opens up to ruining strength. Correct counterplay can cripple his ability to run the lobby, because in order to get that infinite scaling, he does need to kill you while you're alone, and that's why I would actually place him in the B+ tier. if you know what you're doing and you know how to play against this character, it's very easy to keep him in a state where he's not going to run the lobby. But if you make those mistakes and he just gets a little bit too far ahead, it's like a point of no return. You're not really going to weaken him anymore. You just have to stop him from reaching that point in the first place. So yeah, and also he's the first character so far that's versatile enough to sub role. I guess you could also give that to Doorman, but Drifter is generally speaking a carry character. He does a lot of damage and he's supposed to just decimate the enemy team. But if you get unlucky and you're playing Drifter and then there's someone like a Wraith on your team, a Wraith and a Haze on your team that are much more carry oriented and can't really, you know, sub roll, Drifter can go into more of a supportive role and help his team by utilizing his ult properly and securing kills rather than, you know, being the initiator and really just getting the kills, like doing the main source of damage. Next up, we have Dynamo, B tier. I love Dynamo. A lot of you might find this strange that I'm putting Dynamo in B tier because he is really, really, really strong, but everything he does is telegraphed and understandable, and the cooldowns that he has make sense. It's very easy to tell. He can spike up to A tier, but I don't think he ever drops anywhere below B tier. He is basically like my anchor to this whole tier list. Where I put Dynamo is kind of where I decided to put everyone else based on. So like the only change I would ever make to Dynamo is the height of his kinetic pulse. Sometimes it feels a little bad when it's a little bit too high and you're not able to like double jump it or not able to wall jump over it and stuff like that. That feels bad because as a support, I don't think I should be as someone fighting a support, I don't think I should be unable to avoid his damage, especially because of how much damage it does. But besides that, he has really strong utility. He fulfills his role without stepping on toes, so he's the support and he will support your team and he will do that like regardless, you know what I mean? His kit is built towards that and he doesn't step on the other support's toes that are maybe more healing oriented or more disoriented. He's just a good middle ground. He has the potential for being significantly buffed in the future, but I hope he doesn't get significantly buffed going forward. And he might get hit with micro nerfs post video in the short term, because I have seen that they recently nerfed his quantum entanglement, which I'm kind of okay with. I do feel like it was up a little bit too often, but overall, I think Dynamo's really good, in a really good spot, and he's very stable, very predictable, and everything is telegraphed properly with his kit. Next is Graves, A tier, potential to go up to S-, potential to drop to A-. Very stable and consistent power like Calico, albeit with a much lower skill floor. Difficult to contain, often due to player indecisiveness, and near impossible to contain if pocketed. Can be ignored in a fight, but can't be ignored in a push. So let me explain all these notes that I kind of have down. Generally speaking, when I say she has very consistent power, I mean her power doesn't really fluctuate all too much. Graves just kind of coasts along at the same strength from the start of the game all the way to the end. And what really changes is how you play around her. I say she's difficult to contain, often due to player indecisiveness, because you have to know when to push and when to pull. Graves is a close range character, so if you don't get into close range, there's nothing she can really do about you. And because of that, you have to decide when to push her ult, when not to push her ult, when to push her and when not to push her. The thing is that a lot of this becomes less applicable when she has a pocket. If you're not 2v1ing her or 1v1ing her, then it becomes really hard to actually kill her, because as soon as she has like a Rem helping her or a Kelvin helping her or even just another damage dealing helping her, she becomes very impossible to actually deal with, because they're able to clean up and pick up the pace where she falls short, and then if you're in the area where she doesn't fall short, you're fighting two people anyways. Now, the last part I said can be ignored in a fight, but can't be ignored in a push. This is because, again, of her limited range. When you're in a fight, you can just kind of like get away from her and she can't really do anything. But if she's pushing an objective or like puts down her ult and is guarding it, she is now forcing you to come within her fighting area. And that is the difficulty of playing into this character. People that are really good at Graves know how to kind of how to pull this into the greatest effect possible and force you into these unwinnable situations. But generally speaking, even her at her strongest is only S-, which means you can just barely outplay her, especially if you have a better team. Great Talon, C tier, C to B as his range. He's one of the most unique playstyles as he rarely gets his hands dirty, even like a character like Vindicta, who is also very poke long range oriented, is still getting dirty and actually actively in fights a lot of the time, where Great Talon kind of just sits on a lane, keeps shoving it and threatens it. He has his burst fire to deal damage, but most of it comes from the bird. He just kind of ballistic missiles yourself, or ballistic missiles people from across the map. So it's like he only performs so long as he's ignored, especially because he's a glass cannon. If he pushes a bit too far up, almost anyone can absolutely decimate this character because he has like no HP, especially if you're able to stop him from being able to jump up and fly in the air. That being said, he has infinite scaling as well as some other characters, but to a lesser extreme than the others. So the reason I don't really say he can reach S is because the scaling doesn't put him in an opportunity where even if he's hit shot after shot, like bird after bird after bird after bird after bird to get that scaling up, his scaling still doesn't hit a point where like fucking Bebop with 100% stacks or whatever, or 100% bomb damage because of the stacks that he's gotten. Moving on, we have Haze, putting in A tier, S- to A-. You're going to see a lot of the easy to play carries are able to make it into S because their damage does often feel unfair for what the character has to do throughout the match. The character is chock full of unstrategic passives in terms of micro, making them hyper effective for little input. So what I mean by that is like her smoke bomb is technically a passive, like it's an active ability, but it's basically a passive because it has no real effect in a actual fight scenario. Same with her sleep dart, or well, technically her knife, her sleep dagger. That's what it's called, sleep dagger. It doesn't really interrupt any ability, so you don't have to think. There's no risk reward for using your knife. You just use it and then you get damage for using it. Her third ability, the fixation, is literally just gun but better. She does extra damage. And then her ultimate is literally if you just don't feel like aiming anymore. I know that they recently removed the 360 degrees, so finally she's not like a fucking absolute demon in team fights anymore. But like, I don't think it really changes all too much about her power, to be completely honest. I mean, team fights have always been upheld by a lot of other characters. I don't think you really ever needed Haze in order to win these team fights. Most counterplay around her involves identifying if you're playing a passive or a active Haze very early on in the match, very early on in the match. And basically what I mean by that is that some Hazes will be active going in and getting kills, and they'll be moving around the map, killing people behind enemy lines and stuff like that, and just really stopping the enemy team from being, or technically your team if they're on the enemy team, really stopping your team from being able to make moves and is scared to go into jungle. A passive Haze will sit on their side of the map and just passively farm until they become that Avengers level threat. The active Haze is a lot more scary because she gains souls and nerfs and stops your team from gaining souls, but it's a lot more risk and reward because if your team is able to turn any of those fights on her, then she falls behind. Whereas the passive Haze is a lot more sustainable and you're more likely to get to a certain strength point, but you're never going to reach the same amount of strength as an active Haze because the enemy team is still getting strength. Holliday, moving on, is going to be B tier, going up to B plus or even falling down to B minus. Struggles at exploding characters now, by the way. A lot has changed with the mass reworks that happened recently where like Paradox got new bombs and stuff like that. A lot of characters got their kits reworked, rechanged, and had their powers flipped around. Well, Holliday was kind of excluded from that, and because of that, her old kit is kind of now in line with everybody else's newer kit. She performs her designated task to a T and really does nothing more. She's kind of like that mid-tier character. She'll just perform what she can and do so earnestly and honestly. Next is Infernus, who I'm also putting in B tier, but before you get too mad, he is really strong, but as a carry character, I think he is the strength that we should be shooting for, the strength and the design that we should be shooting for. Infernus can definitely run a lobby, but he runs a lobby in a way that doesn't feel unfair to the team playing into him, if that makes sense. He has to build up his burn for him to get that damage that will let him run the lobby. So a lot of your way to stop Infernus from running the lobby is simple things like using cover and being able to stay away from his trail and this and that. Like, you can outplay him to stop him from running the lobby rather than needing to counter buy him, of which he still has items to counter pick and counter buy out of him, albeit usually to a lesser effect than other characters to some degree. Some characters like Victor, some of the tankier characters, if they buy a counter item to Infernus, it can be really brutal. But a lot of the squishier characters, if they buy a counter item, Infernus just has to reapply his burn and then they're gonna die anyways. Moving on, we have Ivy in A tier, going up to A+, and even dropping down to A-. She's one of the most stable characters in terms of strength, where game to game, match to match, you will always perform really, really well. Get good damage numbers, get pretty decent healing, get pretty decent debuff applications and stuff like that, and operating as a support in a really noticeable way. Or not necessarily a noticeable way, but in an effective way, I should say, because people noticing it is actually kind of the one reason why she is in such a high tier. She is often unnoticed in a lot of these team fights. Generally speaking, you don't actually notice unless she's soloing you out and single attacking you. But in a team fight, you don't really notice the Ivy ult or the Ivy stun or the kudzu bomb on the floor, and it leads to her just racking up this tick damage that you don't even realize that you're really fully taking. She's unlikely to be nerfed in a significant way due to this perception. People don't realize how strong she is, and you can see it in the way that they've been updating, nerfing, and buffing her. They always touch her gun every single time, which is okay. And I agree to those changes, don't get me wrong, but the reason that they're touching the gun is because the only time you notice that an Ivy is running your lobby is when it's a gun Ivy, because she is the instrument to your destruction and you're noticing it, unlike the more spirit support Ivies, which are the instrument to your destruction and you don't notice it, so they don't really touch those other parts of her kit. With the exception of just recently with her ult, where people notice, hey, I'm fighting this Ivy, and then she just presses ult and gets away with it. She can just leave whenever she wants, and so they made a change to that. If you do active damage within a certain time frame, it stops her from being able to use her ult, and now I like that change. It makes her ult much more playable, much more usable, and usable for a reason that's supposed to be used in. So yeah, strong in team fight, she can easily flex their role like a lot of characters, but flex it drastically. She can be the carry, she can be the support, she can be this, she can be that. She just all over the board. She can even tank. I've seen tank Ivy builds, and I've seen them work because of how good her stone form is. And the only real drawback to Ivy is that she's kind of mid in a 1v1. Generally speaking, Ivy has to play at a really well level to win a 1v1 against certain characters, but then again, against another half of the cash, you will win that 1v1, which lands her in the middle option, just kind of mid in 1v1 potentials. Kelvin, A- tier, able to go up to A, able to drop down to B+. He's one of the characters with the highest healing outputs in the game, and is unlikely, again, to be nerfed in a significant way due to perception similar to Ivy. Now, they nerfed the parts already that people recognize about the kit. The damage of his gun at one point, and the damage of his beam at another point were way, way, way too high, and people were running at damage Kelvin, and they didn't like that. But they didn't realize how really substantial his healing with both the nades are and with his ultimate, as well as the debuffs that he can apply. His debuffs are crazy, so as a support, he performs crazy numbers, crazy numbers. He is like the yin to Ivy's yang, where like they are both really good debuffers in that terms of support, but Kelvin leans heavier into the support with better healing than Ivy can usually output, and Ivy leans heavier into the carry options by putting out better DPS than Kelvin can. Moving on, we can touch on Lady Geist, B- tier. I can say she can go up to B and even drop down to C+. She has really good sustain and damage, but lacks the mobility to really do much with it. Her counter items can really butcher her viability, stuff like debuff, or I'm sorry, not debuff remover, dispel magic to take off her life drain is horrid. It really cripples her, and she can be counterplayed really easily, albeit interactively and usually in a fun way, to be honest. Lash, B+ tier. Again, he's kind of like Dynamo. He can go up to A-, can drop down to B. Really solid character, really strong but avoidable and telegraphed burst damage. Interactive playstyles with counter items rather than just shutting them down. Like, he does have the classic needing unstoppable in order to counter stuff like a knockdown, but when it comes to things like counterspell and how it works with his ult, he can delay pressing his ult. So many people complain about it so much, but I love doing it as Lash. People will grab counterspell, I jump up, I press the ult, and I just stare at them and I watch them ult. You can hold ult for so much longer than you realize when playing Lash, and it does outlast the counterspell effect, letting you grab a person that even counterspells anyways. Now, it does kind of get tricky when there's multiple people and you're trying to catch some people that are trying to run away and some people have counterspell, but at the end of the day, if you jump up in the air and you're going to grab 4 people and 2 of them have counterspell, grabbing 2 people is still a huge advantage for your team, okay? Let's not get it twisted. He performs very, very well. Seemingly A tier levels of strength, but the investment to pay out is really even. It's pretty even, generally speaking. So that's why I'm putting him in B+ tier with the capability to go up to A- because he does have a little bit of carry potential, and even dropping down to B because it does get kind of hard to learn how to play him with all these counter items that people are using. Next up, we have McGinnis, A- tier, going up to A, dropping down to B. Exists as a timer to the match. She will eventually take all objectives. It's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of how much you bully her and beat her down. As long as the match continues, she will eventually take all your objectives. She serves as an ultimate timer to the, she's like a trooper. She's if you hop into a custom match and you just let the troopers go at it, eventually one side wins. She is like the god of troopers. That's what her job is. She's seemingly unperturbed by soul value. So long as she eventually gets the souls, she's gonna be good. Is one of the worst offenders of being strong or weak by nature of kit. So it's like it's hard to buff and nerf her to a balanced state because the kit plays itself. The kit just plays itself. You hold M1 and drool on your keyboard, and if you're not doing it, you press the first ability button and then drool on your keyboard. Like you just walk forward and take objectives. That's your whole thing. Your gun damage is crazy, your spear damage is crazy, your sustain is crazy. The only issue she has is that she can't move fast. She just can't move fast, and you'll probably see it often in a lot of these clips. As soon as a McGinnis learns mobility, learns movement, she becomes like a demon, dude. Like, what the fuck are you gonna do about that shit? Anyways, I am being a little bit hyperbolic here. She is an A- for a reason, but generally speaking, shutting her down is like an active thing that you have to continuously do and do as a team, because it is very hard to 1v1 her because she has all of her turrets and stuff set up. So overall, she is very strong and very hard to deal with, but if you guys work together, you can deal with her. Moving on, we have Mina, B+ tier, able to go up to A-, able to drop down to B+. A little strong by virtue of bullets to damage ratio, becomes more than manageable once you understand her tempo, and break is a bit overbearing for trying to confirm a kill on her. So like if you're 1v1ing her and you get low HP, it's kind of hard to want to push her. Kind of like with the same thing with Geist, because her melee attack or her rake will just end your life. So sometimes you might fall into that trap. She becomes more than manageable though once you understand her tempo. She comes in, gets that burst, does the rake, and then she kind of has to leave unless she's using toxic bullets. But generally speaking, she's going to come in, apply her debuffs, apply her burst damage, hit her rake, and then bat out. She's gonna bat away, and when she bats away, that is your time to make a choice. Do you all in and dive her as a team, you know, get 2 people in there and just dive her ass before she's able to make you blow up again, or do you back out and chill? Because there's a certain amount of time where she can't really do anything anymore because she's waiting to be able to apply those love bites procs again. So once you understand that tempo, it becomes a lot easier to actually deal with her. That being said, I'm not crazy. Her damage is really brutal at times, and for a lot of the squishier characters, talking about Vindicta, talking about Paige and stuff like that, it does get kind of brutal to deal with her. But you know, it is what it is. She can be beat, and relatively consistently. Mirage. Now, I'm pretty sure Mirage just recently got nerfed. I haven't seen a lot of them played. I've seen Mirage got nerfed quite a few times in the past, and realistically, this guy has never dropped below A tier. This guy's never dropped below A tier. There's many people that said that Mirage was bad, he was this, he was that. He has never dropped below A tier because his thing has always been applying debuffs. Alright? His role has changed, but his effectiveness has hardly changed between updates. So I am pretty confident in saying that he is probably still S+ tier. I would say S+ to maybe S tier. He does an unfair amount of damage. He has unfair buffs like the 60% bullet evasion. He has unfun debuffs and way too much HP. I went into a testing game a testing mode to really see what damage numbers I could get and stuff like that. I could get him to over 4,000 HP and doing carry levels of damage. On what fucking planet are we saying? And it was like, I think I had 25% spirit resist, and then he has the built-in bullet evasion. 60% bullet evasion is crazy, by the way. That's basically 60% bullet resist. It's technically more random because it's evasion and not resistance, so it's not like every bullet does less damage. But that means like if you're to do 1,000 bullet damage to him and he has the 60% bullet evasion, you've theoretically done 400 damage to him instead. He just kind of does everything, and then his ult is a teleport, and that's kind of where I see the issue might be sitting. Is because I think they're giving all this power to the rest of his kit because he doesn't have an ultimate that does damage, but they want him to be a damage dealer. It just makes the rest of his kit much more overbearing because his fourth ability is not interpreted as part of his damage dealing capabilities, so everything else does more damage, so he has to do less to get the same amount of damage as a regular person, if that makes sense. Mirage is just really busted. He's always been busted. It's just his role in the game has kind of changed and flopped around. Alright, so back after a small break, since I don't want to lose my voice, we have Mo and Krill, who I've aptly put into the B- tier, or B+ to B-. So I'm kind of shoving him down onto the lower end. He's very similar to Abrams in terms of role. He's able to get picks and stuff like that, and is able to be the tank for the team. He has better sustain, but reduced damage potential, at least compared to Abrams. Abrams has a shoulder charge, a much sustainable damage through his melee, and then also his ultimate and his siphon. Mo and Krill's most useful form of damage is coming from his burrow or maybe other active items, which technically Abrams also has access to, so I can't really give that to Mo and Krill on its own. Not only that, but Mo and Krill is more reliant on team play than someone like Abrams, which is why he just kind of teeters a little bit below him and actually drops down into the B- area, but is able to work his way up. And generally speaking overall, he's not too difficult to play against. It's much like Calico and a couple of other characters. If you're aware of his location and aware of how safe you are on the map, then generally speaking, you're not really going to feed him too much. He's not going to get too tanky or be too big of a problem, and you're not going to die to him and whoever he's duoing with very often. Moving on, we have Paige, also B tier, going from B to B+, a very reliable kit with value evenly spread between all abilities. Gets really good healing and supportive capabilities from her ultimate, yes, but also her barrier, which also applies a lot of buffs, so she's very good. More reliant on teammates carrying, as damage is inconsistent for duels, so even though the damage is spread out a lot for her kit, generally speaking, they're kind of hard to hit, especially for a dueling purpose, 1v1ing with players. So Paige takes very much a backseat and has to let her teammates kind of do the damage, or at least take aggro for her so she can easily do her damage. But she enables those teammates very well, and much like characters like Mo and Krill and other supports should be looking to kind of roam around with somebody else in order to boost their ability to take on opponents. Moving on, we have Paradox, which I'm placing in A- tier and can raise up to A. Often misunderstood kit, leading to drastically different player perception, but generally speaking, Paradox is really strong. Difficult to shut down and hard to avoid, but baiting engagement cripples her effectiveness. She has, generally speaking, relatively long cooldowns that only hit for a single moment and then don't really exist for a long time afterwards, with of course the exception of her pulse bomb. She can easily take the backseat and also flex roll, so generally speaking, She can be the carry, but she doesn't have to be, and she can be a support, but she doesn't have to be. As long as she's getting her picks, she is doing her job and is able to kind of flex roll into other areas for what the team needs. So long as you bait your engagements against her, make her use her cooldowns, wait after they're done, and then go engage her, she can't really defend herself anymore, and you'll be able to eat her up, spick and spam, no problem. And even if she was to become strong enough to kind of be an S tier character, these long cooldowns is kind of what stops her from really running the lobby as permanently as somebody else like Haze can, because Haze is just gun damage alone is able to stop anybody in her track, whereas Paradox has to wait for those cooldowns to come back in order to do a significant amount of damage at all. Moving on, we have Pocket, A- tier, also going up to A, similar to Paradox, often lacks the damage to secure kills later in matches, but is really good early on, is able to get kills really easily during the mid game, and is really good at it during the lane phase, but still is better at it in the mid game, at least from my experience. He has really good survivability, so he's not really going to die too often, amazing debuffs and tick damage through his ult, and a great burst of damage even though it falls off. Like, he's just really solid, and if you're able to roam around and sneak people and pick them off, you can do so very easily. And then even when it comes later into the match, you have your ultimate to really carry your kit, because you won't be able to burst people down as easily later on. Moving on, we have Rem at A tier, able to go up to A+, able to drop down to A-. Empowered troopers are extremely strong, like one of the most powerful tools that you can have, and Rem has it, and it's such a strong part of his kit. This is what makes him so reliable and so easily able to put into A tier, because it takes no skill to empower your troopers, and those troopers will just do their job but better. Like, it's kind of a cheat code. So even if you as a Rem aren't doing well, so long as you're empowering troopers, which again takes no skill at all, you are gaining a lot of value for your team. He has the unique farm routes that are like that's accessible only to him, Calico, and Mo and Krill. So generally speaking, if you don't get those other two in the match, then Rem has a whole bunch of boxes to himself and is able to keep up, along with the ability to safely steal the center sacrifice machines from enemy teams. He has great team fight, good support, good damage, consistent and hard to ignore pressure. He's just overall really solid, but in a overpowering way, which is why he lands in A tier. Now, moving on, we have 7, also in A tier, able to go up to S-, able to drop down to A-, very consistent damage, really brutal team fight and team wipe capabilities, and stronger than Haze in strength, but harder to perform earlier on in the match. Haze has a, generally speaking, easier early lane phase than 7, mostly due to 7's big ass head hitbox. If his head hitbox was smaller, or if he had a regular head hitbox, then 7 would definitely pull out in front of Haze, but that massive head that massive head hitbox just makes it so it's way too easy to get a shit ton of damage on 7 in a very easy way. Moving on, we have Shiv in the B+ tier, able to go down to B and can't really move upwards too much. His daggers are just a little bit overtuned with regards to the CD to duration ratio. I'm not too mad at the damage or whatever, but it's more so the fact that he can hit you with the dagger, and then if he misses one, he still gets an extra chance to try and reapply the stacks of his bleed, which I don't think is healthy for the game. Recent change to his ult makes it way less BS. I mean, I've literally seen, hopefully I can find the footage that I have, and if I can't, let me just explain it. There's one point I was watching, a Pocket threw his cloak out and then went into his briefcase and then teleported through the briefcase. And what ended up happening is that single moment between him coming out of the briefcase and teleporting, which by the way, I don't think was the Pocket like coming out and then doing it. I think he just pressed the teleport button, which forces you out of briefcase. Just him doing that gave Shiv enough time for him to press his ult and then track him through the wall and teleport to his new location and kill him there. So I'm very glad that they changed how his ult works, because now it is generally like it's just a leap forward and then he has to aim it kind of. He has an incredible and unique use of his gun momentum. I'm really happy that they dropped him down to 2 stamina and then buffed his gun pushback as well. That is a huge level of skill expression that they kind of gutted from Shiv that I'm happy to see come back and adds to his ability to maneuver around the map. It's just great to see. So generally speaking, Shiv, B plus tier, very playable into. Silver, A plus tier, goes up to S, can drop down to A, can be heavily restricted through itemization due to her being not really ranged in her alt form or in her wolf form. Disarming Hex is just that much more brutal for her than somebody else like Drifter. Because Drifter has range, he can, if he gets Disarming Hex, he can just kind of stay in a safe area. Silver has to stay close to you if she wants to get that damage off again, at least while she's in wolf form. Now, recent buffs missed the mark on her seemingly intended playstyle or gameplay loop. Generally speaking, from my understanding, what the gameplay loop was is that you were weaker in your human form and it was more difficult to play in the human form. You had longer cooldowns, but when you hit those cooldowns, especially in succession, you can easily get your ultimate and then you kind of become an unstoppable force. So the gameplay loop, or the way that you play around Silver, is trying to avoid giving her enough damage to be able to get into her ult. Now, they kind of shifted a lot of of the strength of her kit around, so now she's more killable in her ult, at least through my experience, and way more dangerous in her regular human form, which makes her a lot more of a pain in the ass to fight against. Jesus Christ, I'm stuttering over all my words. So basically, in this context, I would say that Silver realistically only needs changes to her default form and nerf those down a bit, and then she can probably come back to maybe A-, probably drop down to B+, of which then we can dust off our hands and call it a day. Looking at Sinclair, also in B+ tier, he's able to go up to A and drop back down to B. Severely held back by the bolt redirection detection not working intuitively. Now let me explain this a little bit. When he sends out his bolt, he's able to re-trigger his first ability in order for the bolt to go to wherever his crosshair currently is, unless he is specifically looking at a character of which then it tries to auto lock onto them. A little while ago, the auto lock was really harsh and would automatically always hit the person, which made Sinclair absolutely brutal. But now it's kind of back in this area where sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think you should get rid of the auto lock altogether, and it would actually improve Sinclair's viability, as you are now giving the power into the hands of the player, so I am able to actually aim properly and hit these people the way it is meant to be hit. Now, that being said, the crazy burst damage and support potential through his debuffs like the bunny, and also the burst damage through his vexing bolt, is nuts. It is absolutely insane how much damage he's able to get out and how much these debuffs do, and it's very hard to catch him, but manageable through itemization. See, you're able to teleport with your assistant, his second ability, which makes him really hard to pin down and get to, but the thing is that silencing him will now actually stop him from being allowed to use that teleportation. So as long as you have a silence, it's a bit harder for him to get away than it was previously. Moving on, we have Venator at the A- tier, able to go up to A, able to drop down to B+. He tends to lack the raw gun damage potential of other carries, which is what is kind of teetering him and putting down in A-, but it is still there. He can be easily outplayed with good positioning, increasing the ability to survive him. So for example, most of his output comes from his shotgun being able to stun you into a wall, or from his ultimate just picking you off from doing a crazy amount of damage, both of which can be outplayed with good positioning, good cover, and good movement. Still, at the end of the day, he's a tank with high damage, so it's kind of hard to take him down, and generally speaking, more often than not, you're better off kind of leaving him alone unless you have a soul lead on him, or if you have multiple people around to jump him. Moving on, we have Victor at S tier. He goes up to S+ and can drop down to S-. Now, admittedly, I've not played a lot of Victor ever since the newest change, but the newest change looks bullshit, alright? Access to frequent debuff removals makes this character nearly untamable, because the only ways that you could really kill Victor is either A, through reducing his healing that he's doing to himself through his lifesteal, or by reducing his move speed so that you're able to stop what he's actively able to do, especially because Victor is a very AoE around him based character. So if he can't get close to you, then he can't really do damage, and then he's just taking damage for no reason. Or if you're reducing his healing, and then you can kill him even while he's on top of you. But the fact of the matter is that he's able to remove these debuffs multiple times over and over again by using his Jumpstart, so it doesn't even matter in the first place. He's top tier in tankiness, top tier in debuffing, top tier in damage output, and nearly inescapable, especially because of the recent change to reduce your dash distance when he hits you with his Aura of Suffering is one of the most brain dead fucking things I could ever fucking read out of these patch notes. It was actually insane, because genuinely, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do about this guy? Jumps on top of you, is hiding, and then fucking engages you in some sort of way, and then pops out his thing. You genuinely cannot get away from him, and because he's life stealing from you, you genuinely cannot kill him, and you can't reduce his life steal or slow him down because he can remove all those debuffs. The only single exception is Pocket's ult. Pocket's ult is the only thing that can really counter Victor in this state, and even then he has the second life, so even if he dies he comes back, so you're gonna need like Pocket with Refresher to kill Victor. Jesus Christ, at least a Victor that's worth his salt. Anyways, moving on, Vindicta, we have B+ tier, able to drop down to B, but not really letting her get any higher than B+. She has infinite scaling, which makes her dangerous, but overall is unlikely to scale as efficiently as other characters, because Bebop and Drifter, or well, with Bebop it's very easy, and with Drifter it's by a lot. With Vindicta it's harder than Bebop's, but easier than Drifter's, and scales more than Bebop's, but less than Drifter's. Anyways, she has really good debuffs and damage in her kit, being able to basically match her gun damage with spirit damage by using her flight, and also applying a crazy amount of DPS over time, or damage over time with her crow, as well as shredding resistance and also having a nice tether. She's rightfully held back though by her low HP pool and mobility. Those two stamina bars really does affect her, and the fact that she's kind of a sit and duck while she's flying is also a big factor. So, and with that being her having low HP, if her positioning is not good or she uses her cooldowns in the wrong way, she can easily explode. So even no matter how strong she gets, so long as you focus her, she will die. Now then, next online we have Viscous at B tier, which I'm letting him go up to B+, or even drop down to B-. He has multiple and vastly different builds and playstyles, really good at saving others, really good CC, really impressive burst damage, really good stun and survivability, and really hard to play. Generally speaking, you do need to buy some sort of counter item for some of his builds. For example, he's playing a Spear Burst Down build around his Splatter, then Counter Spell is really good against him. If he's running more of a Puddle Punch build, then running Rebuttal can be really useful, or even just parrying in general to stop that damage is really good. And then if he's running more of a healing build, well then he's kind of at the mercy of his team being able to carry him, because he is just there to kind of support them. And generally speaking, as a Viscous player, I would suggest hybridizing between one of these three builds in order to get something that is requiring of the enemy team to buy multiple counter items just to deal with you, so your usefulness never really disappears. Moving on, as we're finally getting close to the end, we have Vyper, putting her in A+ tier, going up to S, dropping down to A. Much like Apollo, she has immense base kit strength. Unlike Apollo, is far easier to play. Also, like Apollo, is heavily shut down by items, and unlike Apollo, the counter item is far more expensive. This is what makes Vyper a lot easier, and kind of with what I brought up with what's his name, Drifter. Even if you get something like Disarming Hex to shut off that gun that everybody fucking hates, it's only really 3 seconds before it comes back online, so you're gonna need multiple 3200 items to be able to kill Vyper, and even at that point, you're gonna also need some counter items to stop her from being able to slide away untouched. Next up, we have Warden at A- tier, going up to A and staying in A- at lowest. He's very tanky and deceptively quick. He removes stamina, making even good stamina management and good positioning bad, and so you must play safer. High and consistent damage through his gun and through his flask, which is relatively easy to hit, and generally unaffected by counter items. There's not really many that you can get that kind of stops Warden in his tracks. You can try Disarming Hex to get rid of most of his damage, but generally speaking, he's going to survive the duration of it. Moving on, we have Wraith at A tier, able to go up to S-, able to drop down to A. She has a very unfun ultimate. I am fucking hating this change. Beforehand with Wraith, she would silence and disarm you, but you're able to run away. But that was against an ultimate that you could kind of outplay with good positioning. Now they kind of flipped it around where it's an ultimate that you can't outplay with good positioning, and in turn it locks down your movement, so she pulls you out of position and locks your movement, which just makes it horrible. There's no way to really outplay it or counterplay her ultimate. Generally speaking, you just have to take it on the chin and hope that you're able to get away from her somehow, or maybe even kill her or have a teammate save you or something. Her ultimate is very unfun to play against and is fucking brutal. Not to mention she has infinite ammo as a gun character and is able to scale a lot with a high soul count, a lot like other of the carry type characters, but generally speaking with her, she's up there among the top of them, like 7. Not to mention, at the end of the day, she is generally unaffected by counter items. A counter spell can always be good, but for the most part, there's not much you can really do other than disarming Hex, which I've brought up before. Just a little bit of space between you and somebody that can melt you in half a second is not a big deal. Finally, we have Yamato in the B- tier, able to go up to B+, able to drop down to C+. She has very scary burst damage and premium survivability and sustain, but unfortunately is incredibly susceptible to counter itemization, and not just that, but 2 items that are very, very common. People will often buy Counterspell and Dispel Magic because it just works against so much of the cast, and against Yamato it is very crippling, with your burst slash damage basically being completely wiped off the like your main source of damage completely being wiped out by Counterspell, and your main source of change your main source of chase being completely wiped out by Dispel Magic, because if she hooks onto you and you dispel it, then she just drops. She's not able to chase you or hook onto or fucking catch you through a wall, which I think is okay and makes sense. Generally speaking, I think she's in an okay spot, and at the end of the day, these items are good and kind of required to affect other characters in the cast in a positive way for the game. So I think Yamato is just going to have to deal with sitting at a B- tier and having some rough games here and there. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now that you've heard all my reasons for these placements, you are completely armed to dismantle my points and make me seem like a real dum-dum in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe. I've been the Dapper Rat, and as always, farewell ladies and gents.